This is TWiT episode 228, a very exciting TWiT this week with Kevin Rose and Robert Scoble. We're going to take a look at not only the year gone by, but the decade gone by. What were the big stories of the 2000s? Coming up on This Week in Tech.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Audio bandwidth for This Week in Tech is provided by AOL Music and Spinner.com, where you can get free MP3s, exclusive interviews, and more. Video bandwidth for TWiT is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is TWiT, This Week in Tech, episode 228 for December 28th, 2009, the TWiT of the decade. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Audible.com. Sign up for the Platinum Plan and get 2 free books. Go to audible.com/twit2 and follow Audible on Twitter. User ID audible_com. And by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off your new account, go to squarespace.com/twit. And by the new voice-activated Sync, featuring hands-free calling, music search, and turn-by-turn navigation. Available exclusively on Ford, Lincoln, and Mercury vehicles. For more details, visit syncmyridepodcast.com. It's time for TWiT, This Week in Tech, this decade in tech. Our year-ender, our decade-ender. This is exciting. We've got videos from all the TWiTs and a lot of TWiT listeners and viewers. But let's start with the TWiTs who are on the show today, and I'm going to start with in the upper right-hand corner of our Hollywood squares, Robert Scoble of the Scobleizer blog and building43.com. Hi, Robert.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
You're a good guy to have on to talk about the big stories of the decade because you are the guru of social media.
I don't know about that.
Well, you're certainly omnipresent.
You just reduced my salary by about 50%.
That's true. That's true. Also with us, I'm really glad to have one of the original TWiTs on the show today, Kevin Rose from dig.com, another visionary who has changed the world of technology news and news in general.
Hey, Robert.
Hey, what's up?
Okay, Robert, you have to wave to the that side. There you go. Yeah, high five each other. It's a Brady Bunch moment, I must say. I hope you do see the video, folks. So Kevin's at home in Vegas at his family's home, and thank you for spending a little time with us after Christmas.
Absolutely.
Happy
holidays.
Did you have a good holiday, Kevin?
Yeah, great one.
It's nice.
It's always fun to get out and see the family.
We're going to be going back down to Vegas for a CES. You going down for CES?
I think I'm going to stay for the Apple event, actually. Isn't that around the same time?
Okay, that's a good question.
CES is the 9th and 10th. Apple is the 26th.
26th is Apple, right?
So that's the big story. Before we get to the looking back,
that's next decade, though. I thought this. We
should look ahead. So now the rumor is, and it's still just at the stage of a rumor, that Apple has reserved Yerba Buena Center, where they traditionally hold their iPod events, for it's the 26th of January. That's the day.
I believe so. I could double check, but I'd have to.
But that's a rumor. But I'm not surprised that that's leaked out. When you book a venue like that, of course, a lot of people know about it.
It's more than a rumor. The guy who knows Steve Jobs has told me about the tablet, and he says it's going to be one of those products that Steve has actually worked on for years. And my brother-in-law worked at Apple for a while, and he knew about the tablet 3 years ago. So
they've been working on it since PowerPC. They've been working on it since PowerPC. I mean, there's no question about that. The New York Times this week quoted an Apple employee saying Steve's really happy with the tablet at this point.
The same guy told me this might be Steve's last major project as well. So,
you know who this guy is? That was
yeah. It'll be interesting to see who. I don't know who was quoted in the New York Times. I have my other.
Your source. I see.
That I know. It'll be interesting to see what Steve says about that. Steve was, from what this guy who knows Steve well, it told me, it was a lot closer to death than a lot of us know about.
Oh dear.
And is this his legacy? That's going to be what will be interesting to see if that evolves as a story over the next month.
Kevin, you have excellent Apple sources. Have you heard anything?
Other than it's just going to be the Kindle killer. That's what I keep hearing over and over again, that it's more like interactive books, and it's going to be – my source said to me, expect to see a lot of Kindles on eBay the day after the announcement.
Wow.
So –
wow. It's, the other quote – there's your Kindle.
Get ready
with Emily
to
Dickinson.
now.
I like my Kindle.
Anybody want to buy it? We'll auction it off.
The other quote is that you will be amazed by the user interface, and it's not what you expect. What does that say to you, Kevin? What does that mean?
That says buy Apple stock. Is what that says.
Well, apparently Wall Street agreed, because Apple has soared to a new high and is doing very well in the stock market. Apple, you think it'll be the iSlate? That's the other rumor, is that they've
that's the New York Times dropped that, right? In one of their speeches, one of the guys let slip the iSlate as the name. But I'm excited. I think that there's a lot of things you could do when it comes to like ebook readers. We're very much like, it's still, the Amazon book is very much page to page, no social interactions, no sharing. It's just, I think there's so much more they could do there.
Somebody thought that the UI might have something to do with a camera on the front and gesticulating.
Well, that makes sense. I bought this app just the other day, and I'm reading it. It's not even an app. It's really a book done by the guy who started CSI. It's one of the most expensive apps you'll
What's it called?
buy.
Levi? What is it?
Level 26.
Level 26.
And it's an ebook. So let me try to click in here. But
How much was it? How much was it?
It was $13, which is, if you're comparing it to a book on the Kindle, it's more comparable to a book, but it's expensive for an iPhone app. But they're talking with Apple, or working with Apple, on getting this kind of content on the tablet. So imagine you have a bigger display surface, and imagine you have ability to look at, notice there's a video here. I can't unlock it because I haven't read down to that yet. But this is done by the guy who who started CSI. So they're looking at ways to make books that are interactive, that have not just text. Let me get back into the text here. Not just text with beautiful text. And from what my source at Apple told me was, look at the Quartz APIs, because those are all text handling APIs. And he said this is the first device that will really use the Quartz APIs in any major way. So imagine a device that has some new way to swipe and look at text, along with video and along with graphics, like chemistry textbooks. Apple's going after the textbook market as well with this.
The ability to have embedded rich media, and then also to annotate on top of certain, paragraphs that you find interesting, share those with friends. If I'm reading down a certain page and I see a friend's icon pop up on some text that they've read and want to leave a comment on, these are all things that we can do now, obviously, with the net. And I hope Apple's including that in this first release.
It kind of makes sense that Apple would be involved in ebooks, because they're so good at content, soup to nuts content, starting with music, that they would have an ebook store and all of that stuff. But it's hard to compete. Amazon's got 650,000 books on there. How are they going to compete against that?
Well, look at what you heard about the Amazon, their announcement on Christmas, right? They actually sold more ebooks than physical books for the first time. Yeah, and the Kindle was their number one selling product. Yeah. It's clearly that, this, if you're going to say one thing that happened in 2009 is that the ebook came of age. But Apple could turn this all on its head. But see, it seems to me that's just one part of what an iSlate might be. It also, would be a surfing platform, right? It's going to have always on web, always on internet. Well, what about a remote control for your TV system? Right? I use my iPhone as a remote control for the Sonos. It makes a great remote control. In fact, I use it for the Apple TV. It makes a great remote control. So, yeah. And also video could be interactive, get even more interactive, where you're playing games along with TV shows, because on your Surface up front, you have fun things you could do with the family while watching TV. Anything surprising in the iSlate? You guys want to make any predictions? I'm sure there will be something, crazy. We saw the patent for a new kind of keyboard that actually looks like a piece of glass, but has some sort of feedback to your finger, so that some sort of haptic feedback. Yeah. That's what I was really kind of concerned with, in a way, is that I really want, obviously the paper is a big deal because you can read without your eyes getting strained like you get on the Kindle. And I'm assuming that this is going to be some type of like OLED or something like that. And I'm wondering if they're going to run into like eye strain problems. But then I was thinking, well, I'm on my laptop for 8 hours a day. My eyes really don't get strained on that so much. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
In fact, I like the idea of a bright, backlit color display that's more interactive than the Kindle. The Kindle's not very interactive. It's a page turning.
Keep in mind this technology is not is using little balls that turn.
Right.
And that's why it uses so little power, because it's not shining a light.
I think people have overplayed the fact that you can go weeks without a battery. I think we're already used to charging up our devices every day now. So the idea that it goes weeks, big deal. I'll plug it in at night. Right?
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me.
I use my Kindle very little, to tell you the truth. I use it
every night.
I use Kindle on my iPhone more than I use Kindle on the Kindle.
Apple's going to have to make some deals, though, with the big publishers. Maybe it's a periodical reading device. Kindle is not very good for magazines and newspapers because it's for turning pages. It's not for what you got, the National Geographic? Is that a Kindle version?
I have every single issue of the National Geographic.
On a hard drive. Wow.
$200 on a hard drive.
Wow.
And this would be a perfect thing to put on a tablet. The UI is sort of goofy, so if Steve Jobs got a hold of this UI, he would redo it.
Mad Magazine broke my heart. They released every copy of Mad, the first 500 copies of Mad, and UI. They're all PDFs.
Let me try to plug it in
and
so I can show you.
It's so crappy, and in fact, you miss the marginalia because it's covered. But it's just awful.
Can you fold the back page?
Yeah, you can't even fold. Yeah, exactly. What good is that? Let's. One of the things we're going to do today is we're going to hear from many of the twits, many of our twit listeners about the big stories of the year gone by. It turns out there's a pretty big story ahead, and I think it's worth covering. But we can also look back too. So, Robert, while you're setting up National Geographic, let me get Patrick Norton and his video on the line here. These are Patrick's thoughts about the year and the decade gone by.
Hey, Leo, everybody in the Twit Cottage and everybody out there in the Twit Army. My story of the decade, Moore's Law applies to everything. And my dog's running away. I'm down here in Half Moon Bay at the airport, and I'm thinking, I just bought an iPhone that does more for my wife over the holidays than my first computer did. And I'm sending the video to you over wireless Ethernet. Mostly, I'm stoked with how far wireless comms have come and how cheap everything keeps getting. I just want people to put mufflers on their Harleys at the end of the decade, so you guys can see yes.
Happy end of the decade, Patrick. I like how he's got a muddy shirt on. I don't know what he was up to before he left that message.
He just had breakfast or something.
Patrick is
that's classic Patrick, though, right?
Classic Patrick. He's out somewhere where there's motors, got mud on himself, but he makes a very good point. I mean, that's absolutely true. He's not the only one who thought that. Let me see if I can get Randall Schwartz's video on here too. Randall is the host of Floss Weekly. He also thought that Moore's Law was the big story. Now, ironically, Moore's Law is 40 years old. So, it's not really this decade, but what happens when things double every 18 months is that it starts to get faster and faster and faster and faster. And Moore's Law means that you're going to see a lot next year too. You got the National Geographic up?
Yeah, so here's an issue from 1972, and they've scanned in every single page, including the ads and everything, and you can just page through it. Imagine you had this on a tablet, and you could just use your hand to swipe over it.
Do you think it'll have that? The Tom Cruise hand swipe?
Oh, if it's Apple and it's touchscreen, it's going to have candy, right? They love the candy interfaces.
Yeah.
They could. I mean, I've seen that at Microsoft using a camera. A camera can tell where your hand is. So using a device with a camera and just swiping over it would be fairly easy technologically to do.
I actually have something like that for iTunes. It was just a little dumb download for iTunes that did that. So
anyways, this is $200 for the hard drive, and you get every single issue of the National Geographic.
That's funny. How big is the hard drive?
I don't even know. It doesn't say on it. So I guess I could do Control-I on.
That's a hoot. That is a crack up.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And you can search for things. You can zoom in, and yeah,
I'm trying to find Randall's. Shoot, it's not on the list here. So Randall had the same point about Moore's law. You guys have any thoughts about that? How
it's only a 64 gig drive.
Oh, that's why they can make it cheap.
Yeah.
Is it on this list? Yeah, Merlin. Ah, there it is. That's why he's using his nom de plume, Merlin.
Hi, this is Randall Schwartz, host of Floss Weekly. What I think the big technology story is for the first decade of the new millennium is the fact that we're in the fourth decade of Moore's Law, where everything gets smaller, faster, and cheaper, doubles every 18 to 24 months. I think this is amazing because we've had exponential growth for 4 decades, and we're starting our 5th decade. It looks like there's no end in sight. It's this technology increase that's enabling all these other things like ubiquitous internet and social media and being able to share videos and rich media instead of having to just simply type text characters at each other. This is what's amazing to me, is that we're continuing to do this, and every time it looks like we're topping out, we come up with some new technology like smaller transistors, optical transistors, molecular transistors I just heard last week. Really amazing stuff. So I think that's got to be the fact that we're in our 4th decade, going on our 5th decade of Moore's Law.
And of course, it's just going to accelerate faster and faster and faster. I thought it's very interesting to watch Patrick's bit, because look at all the technology he's using. He kind of brought this up. He was using an eVideo modem, so he had internet out in the middle of nowhere. He has video. He has audio recording. He can record it on the internet, and we can get it on the internet instantaneously. He recorded it just an hour ago. I mean, we're seeing all this stuff converge in a kind of an amazing way.
One of the coolest tours I ever did was IBM's research in New Almaden, the New Almaden Research Labs, where they let me move a single atom, an iron atom, across a piece of copper. And they're doing research to try to find new ways of storing data in even smaller spaces than we can today.
We can thank the Almaden Research Labs for our hard drives. It was there the Winchester disk was invented and I think really perfected. So
yeah, they have the first hard drive sitting in the lobby. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
Did you guys go down to the Computer History Museum?
I haven't been down there yet.
So awesome.
Yeah, Gwen Bell started that. She's since passed away, Gordon Bell's wife. But yeah, that's supposed to be an amazing place.
Yeah, it's great.
But they don't have the first hard drive.
It's pretty big, isn't it? I mean, it's
huge. It's like a refrigerator.
Yeah,
and it only was like 5 kilobytes. And they put the Surface on.
Wait a minute. Say that again. Not 5 gigabytes. Not 5 megabytes.
5 kilobytes.
5 kilobytes.
And the platters are huge, like the size of this table. And they put the Surface on it by pouring it out of coffee cups while the thing was spinning, and it would spread over the Surface.
Yeah. Another big story. You're going to be flying home, Kevin, in a little bit. Mm-hmm. You may want to pee before the last hour of the flight, because after this clown from Nigeria set off explosives in the plane, the Delta plane to Detroit, the TSA regulations changed yesterday. And I was watching Jeannie Jardin as she tweeted this from her Air Canada flight. And she said that the flight attendants were a little chagrined. They were not happy about this. The news is you cannot get up in the last hour of the flight. You cannot have anything in your lap, even a book, let alone a laptop or a Kindle. That you can't, touch your baggage. You're basically, you might as well have your hands in the air for the last hour of the flight.
Are terrorists going to wait for the last hour?
It's crazy. Bruce Schneier, the great security expert, that's the first thing he said. Oh, okay, that's going to work. But he said all along that our TSA, our flight security, is really about theater, not about security.
Totally.
Crazy.
Totally. Did you see the myth show? What do you call it? Mythbusters. They were showing how to blow up things using flour. Pour flour in the air and light a match.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I think Bruce helped an Atlantic Monthly writer last year break pretty much every law by sneaking knives, scissors, using false passports. He had a Hezbollah flag and a Death to the Infidels T-shirt. I mean, the guy, it was like they didn't stop him for anything. It's not about security. It's about theater. It's about making you think you're secure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'd be very interesting to watch because I'll tell you what, forget not going to the bathroom in the last hour. You try to take people's Kindles and laptops away in the last hour, or cell phones. Let's get another video in here. This is from Dan Patterson, who's been on TWiT before, works for ABC News. Dan left a message via Vidly.
Hey, my name's Dan Patterson. I'm a content manager and correspondent, and my theory on the story of the decade isn't so much one story, but it's this series of ideas that have coalesced and really created something that is very unique to humans. And that is the reduction in the distance and friction between people, other people, and information. And if you buy the arguments that people are inherently social, humans are inherently curious, and we're all inherently lazy, and by that I mean we like efficiencies in how we get information. If you buy that argument, then you buy the tools that allow people to reduce the distance and friction between people, other people, and information will inherently be successful. And because we like efficiency in the delivery of our curiosities, what we've seen is the growth in companies, but really companies that are propelled by ideas. And it warms my geek little heart to see idea companies propagate. So beyond the tech gossip and the stories that we follow in a cycle year after year, I think the biggest story of the decade was the emergence of organic ideas and how they can propagate and bring people together. So I'm Dan Patterson. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
You're kind of an expert on that, Kevin. I mean, that's a lot about what Dig is all about, is using people power to propagate ideas and to choose the ideas that get propagated.
Well, not only that, but I think that, I moved out to San Francisco back in 2000 in the first .com boom.
Oh, so this has been your decade.
Well, what I'm saying is that if you wanted to start a company back in 2000, though, I mean, it was a lot more difficult than it is today.
Yes.
I mean, you'd actually have to go out and buy dedicated servers, and there was no Amazon S3, there was no EC2. And to get an idea off the ground today, or even just a few years ago, or over this last decade, it's been the barrier to entry has been lowered quite a bit to where, if you have something new that you want to explore. It really is, a couple $1,000s to get something off the ground and launch it.
Well, that's a really good point. That's completely changed everything, hasn't it?
Absolutely, especially the way that we scale websites. I mean, it was really difficult back in the day, and the fact that you can go and just launch new server instances over in milliseconds, depending on what the load is of your current site, based on EC2. It's just so much easier than it was even just a few years ago.
And Rackspace.
And Rackspace, says Rackspace employee Kevin Robert Scoble.
What I was putting up on screen right here is a Twitter room or Twitter list of a bunch of people who are covering the Iranian protests. And this was pretty difficult to do even a year ago. And now we can see 346 people, all who are covering the Iranian protests, most of whom are actually in Iran. It's pretty amazing that we can connect to each other this way.
I think that was a story, in many ways, a story of the year, is the Iranian rebellion in Twitter. And, of course, it's flared up again this week. But Mumbai, I mean, a lot of things. Twitter became, in many ways, a news source, which is a very strange thing, almost an unpredicted thing, that this kind of trivial 140-character thing would become a news source. I call it the internet nervous system. I mean, it really is starting to become the way that, the ganglia that we communicate with each other. And it has reduced the friction of communication considerably. You used to have to blog this stuff, or you'd have to find a blog, you'd have to go to the blog, you'd have to Google it. Now it's all there. You just follow this real-time stream.
Yeah, I have another list of world news brands, 218 news brands from like Wall Street Journal, CNN, New York Times, and others, and they are all flowing into a stream here, and you get to keep up to date on the world as it happens.
Kevin, I get the sense that the Dig is going to go a little bit real time soon.
Yeah, I mean, we do real-time trend detection right now. So we'll actually promote stories up on the front page for people to vote on based on how many incoming submissions there are. But we have some deep integrations coming with a bunch of different players and some big announcements in the next few months. So
every time Kevin's
absolutely.
on, he's got a big announcement that he can't talk about. But I think that's the nature of Dig. You're always kind of reinventing it and going along. And clearly real time is where it's happening now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what we have to do as a company is we have to take a look at all the different sources of information and kind of just act as Switzerland and sit there. And if we're seeing a trend happen in Twitter, we can map that to the best stories on Dig. And if there's other things happening on Facebook and other networks, we want to be able to pull all that in and kind of do that one.
That's it. Yeah. So you see yourself as an aggregator.
Absolutely. We see ourselves as like a neutral Switzerland where we'll sit there and we can be able to pull in all different types of data and information from all around the web.
I like that. I like that model a lot. I mean,
do you see Google's new real-time displays in search result pages as a competitor to Dig or a potential competitor to Dig?
The problem with Google's displays is that they're largely unfiltered. So like you'll be sitting there and you'll do a search on something and you'll get whoever just happened to last send a comment. So really what you kind of have to do is you have to take a look at who those users are, how much authority they have on that topic, and then be able to rank them inside that community. So really kind of like the way that Google applies PageRank to individual web pages, we're kind of looking at the same thing when it comes to humans. So how can we say how much influence someone has in a given area? I was doing a lot of that on WeFollow, some of the Twitter directory that I started. It's actually ranked not by follower count, but now based on how much influence they have in that
I noticed that, which helped me a lot. By the way, thank you. Because I couldn't.
It's just one piece of math, but yeah, it boosted you way up there. Actually,
I got a lot higher on the ranking than before. But so it's two parts: it's aggregation, but it's also curation. And the real question, and the question Google asks and you ask, is: can you automate either, or does it have to be human powered?
Well,
I think it needs to be a mixture.
It's human power behind the scenes, right? Like all of the tweets and all the data that we have coming in is obviously all from individuals, as is it with PageRank. I mean, if you think about PageRank, it is actually physical humans creating links to other websites.
That's true.
So they were really the first one to kind of assign authority to individuals, right? They called it web pages, but it was really individuals and humans that were placing those links.
Yeah, what I was showing you before was a Iran protest. A search on Google for Iran protest, and you can see some of them look really authoritative, like there's an NPR link in there. What we're talking about is this area here that has real-time feeds put into it. But who the heck is this guy? And he says, Iran protests again, many deaths, watch oil. That doesn't help anybody.
It's horrible, in fact. It's like it's a stock tip. So it strikes me that's one thing Google has not done very well is harness authority or harness human power.
They're a very engineering driven kind of A/B testing organization. They were if you think back onto kind of the early start of Web 2.0 and who was really active in this space and from an acquisition standpoint, it was really kind of Yahoo, right? They were the ones buying the Flickrs and Delicious and really looking like the emerging leaders when it came. And actually, they were the first ones to have, the human power directory that they launched with.
Right.
So it's like it's kind of a shame in my eyes to see them kind of fall off. And now Google's kind of starting to play with that, but they're playing catch up to Facebook. If you take a look at the features that they've been launching over the last 6 months to a year, it's all been different ways to combat Facebook's growth.
Yep. Heather Gold has something to say about that. She's the host of Tumble Talk on one of our shows.
Hi, I'm Heather Gold, and my favorite tech story of the last decade is the democratization of media. We've gone from creating streaming in the mid-90s all the way to everybody having their own smartphone everybody, but being able to broadcast from a phone, to Leo having his own studio in a cottage, which is fantastic. And I'm looking forward to broadcasting myself and a world where we get media from everywhere, and hopefully in another 10 years, the mainstream media looks very different, and we'll have more democratic change in Iran and many other places, in part because we've had access to media everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's really true. That's one of the things I talked about when I went to Dubai to do the TEDx Dubai, is that the fact that the mainstream media no longer controls everything means that you get to tell your own story. In fact, I encouraged the particularly people from the Arab world who are listening to my talk, here's your chance to tell your story in a way that's disintermediated. That, you know, American media has a very strong point of view about Arabs.
Yeah.
You want to affect that? Here's your chance.
Well, no, that this year we saw the rise of HD video on YouTube. You can use a camera like this one, which is still a fairly expensive camera, but affordable to a fairly wide range of society.
Minnow HD or the ZI-8 is good enough. That's what you use, isn't it, a lot of the time?
I'm using more the 5D because there is a difference in quality, and also 5D. I can zoom in and
it's the lenses. Yeah. It's funny. All three of us have Canon 5D Mark IIs. And somebody actually said that was one of the big stories. If you begin the decade, I looked back in 1999.
Yep.
The big digital camera breakthrough was 3 megapixels. It was, remember this, the Nikon Coolpix 950. It was the one that had the twist, the two parts.
Yeah, the twist side, yeah.
It was 3 megapixels, and that was a huge breakthrough. We began the decade with that. And now you'd look back on that and say, ugh. And what is, you know, Nikon's got the D3, the D70, the D90. Canon's got the 5D, the 7D. I mean, revolutionary.
I remember I was actually, later 90s, 96. I was working at 97, maybe. I was working at Best Buy, and I was doing all the computer fixing and repair in the back. And we'd have people returning digital cameras because the battery life on them, first of all, it was non-rechargeable batteries. You had to slide in the AA's, right? So you had to put in like 4 AA's. They were all VGA cameras. So like the resolution was like 640 by 480 or something like that. And you would get, with a little tiny LCD, you would get probably, I mean, this is like postage stamp size LCD. You would probably get maybe 2 hours of usage before you'd have to put 4 new, brand new AA's in it. It was just ridiculous.
Remember the Sony Mavica that recorded on a floppy?
I had an Apple QuickTake.
A QuickTake was a VGA camera, right? Or maybe even half VGA. It was 320.
It was black and white. It was grayscale.
You would record it on a little floppy on the Mavica. And I remember it was during Tech TV because people would come to our events and take pictures of these, and it would take forever to save onto the floppy. Oh, Lord. And, of course, you couldn't even get a quarter of an image on a floppy now. I mean, 1.4 megabytes? No.
Well, then later with recording to the CD, right?
Yes.
They started doing that with the video cameras.
That's right.
Or camcorders.
We're going to continue.
Yesterday I did an interview. It took 13 gigabytes on my 5D.
And it was probably 10 minutes, right?
No, 40 minutes. But, HD video.
It takes up some space.
Yeah.
We're going to, and how big is a card in there? 16 gig card?
32.
32 gig card.
32.
Robert, does it stop every 12 minutes or no?
Every 14 minutes, yeah, because it's a fat file system.
So right. 2 gigs is the max.
4 gig.
4 gigs is the max.
Per file, yeah.
Okay.
And so you can only store 14 minutes.
I think that's a good discipline. Glitch. I don't think that's a bad thing. That's a good discipline. You shouldn't be shooting more than you shouldn't shoot more than 5 seconds at a time. Why? Go see a movie. You ever sit on a shot for 14 minutes? I don't even sit on a shot for 14 minutes.
You should talk, Leo. We're watching this for an hour every Sunday.
Yeah, but I switch. It's always moving. Look at that. Hey, speaking of switching, let's take a little break. We're going to come back. Kevin Rose from Dig is our guest. Robert Scoble from Scobleizer and Building43.com. We have a lot of videos from all of our viewers and many of our TWiT hosts talking about the decade past. This is our year-ender, our decade-ender. I do want to talk about Squarespace.com. Talk about a revolution in making websites. That's something that's completely transformed over the last few years. The ability to make good-looking, simple, easy websites that can handle huge traffic. It's remarkable. Squarespace, the leader here. These guys started this in college just a few years ago, and now they're the absolute leaders. I know Kevin uses Squarespace for his website. They're the absolute leaders in easy websites, hosting, plus the software, beautiful designs, drag and drop, allows you to very easily create a site that looks good and then modify it very easily. They also make it very easy to import your data and export it. It's not a roach motel. You're not trapped at Squarespace. If you go to squarespace.com/twit right now, you get 10% off your membership, or just try it for free. No credit card needed. Just go to squarespace.com/twit. iPhone app is spectacular. The stats, fantastic. The import from WordPress, TypePad, Blogger, couldn't be easier. The export right back out. Beautiful photo galleries and more. Squarespace.com/twit. Try it free for 14 days right now. No credit card, no commitment. And if you decide to buy, you'll get 10% off when you use the coupon code TWIT. Take a look at some of the gallery of sites that they're doing. The examples are just remarkable. Squarespace.com/twit. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. Let's do another video. We've got videos from many of the TWIT hosts. This would be kind of a fun one since we were talking about cameras. Chris Marquardt is the host of the Tips from the Top Floor podcast and appears regularly on my Tech Guy radio show, and he has something to say about photography.
Hey, Leo. Hi, everyone else out there. This is Chris Marquardt of Tips from the Top Floor, and the by far most important development for me personally and for a lot of other people in the photography and video field is the inclusion of cinema quality video functions in pretty regular DSLRs. Not only do they go up to very high ISOs these days, they also include video quality that you wouldn't have thought possible from devices like this a year ago. So things have really changed big time, and this is going to change the landscape for many people. It has started to do that for me, and that'll continue. So that's it from me. Happy New Year.
I think we're all in agreement on that one. Robert's showing his 5D. What is that lens you have on there? Is that a wide-angle lens?
Yeah, it's a 17 to 40 millimeter.
Nice, same here.
F4.0. I looked at the 2.8, but the 4 is half the price and lighter to carry. And the 4 actually gives you more depth of field, which really helps you on video because unfortunately,
it's hard to keep it in focus. I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. These small monitors don't let you focus really well in video. So you really have to work at it. And having more depth of field really helps you.
Yeah. I actually got the 2.8, but
that's because you're rich.
It's because I got more money than Kevin. Kevin, actually, you must be doing all right because I'm seeing your name more and more on angel investing. You just put some money into GoWalla, right?
I did, yes.
I like GoWalla. Really cool.
You know, I'm bullish on the social kind of location saving space.
Yes.
Foursquare, GoWalla, all these guys, Loop, there's a bunch of them that are getting into the game. I think that really, if you take a look at what we're doing, how we're bookmarking places that we visit and places that we care about. I mean, when I have kids, and Leo, you're using this, when your kids get older and they want to start looking back, where was Dad on this day? They'll be able to jump back in time and see exactly where you were, your favorite hangouts. I think it's awesome.
That's interesting. I never thought of it. So you're saying that there's GoWalla right there.
See that number 10 right there?
Yeah.
That's the number of unique places that Scoble has been to. So that means he's actually been to 10 places that he's checked out. You might have checked into several of those places multiple times, but mine's at about 90. So it encourages you to go out there and try new stuff. I find myself like someone saying like, hey, do you want to go try this? And normally I'd be like, no, let's just go to the place I normally like to go to. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get an extra badge. I'll get an extra little number going up I want. If I go check this out, I might as well. And then you go there and you see who else is there. The thing I think is really cool about these places or about these applications is that you can see who's there before you even walk in the door. It's nuts. You can go to a bar in San Francisco, and I know it's not like this everywhere, but San Francisco being a very tech-centric city, you can go to a bar, choose the people in the bar, and it'll show you how many people of your friends or just anyone have checked into that place in the last few hours. So I can actually see who's in there before I walk in.
I only have 9 badges. You have 90 badges?
Yeah. Well, you got to start checking in more places.
Check. Well, I just started using GoWalla. Now, we talked to Dennis from Foursquare on Net at Night last week. And this is tough to choose from. Both of these programs. I've been using GoWalla because of you, Kevin, because I want to support you. But both of these,
I'm an investor in both. So
you are? I didn't know that. Oh, you're hedging your bets then.
I just, GoWalla came a little bit later down the road, and those guys approached me. And I went out to dinner with Josh, and he's such an amazing guy. And I really like what they're kind of going in different directions in my mind.
Are they? Because they both seem like they're using kind of gaming to make it more fun.
Yeah, but the difference is that GoWalla is doing a lot more kind of item-based stuff. So as you collect different virtual items, you can see whose hands they're passing through. They also did this contest thing where if you check into certain places, they were hiding real items like gifts in
that's
locations.
Cool. Yeah, because I've been dropping items, but I didn't know there were real items too. That's cool.
Yeah, there's real items, that they hide around. You can somebody found an iPod underneath the Christmas tree in the center of San Francisco.
Wow.
And they picked it up, and then you
That's
put in your
smart.
name and info, and they send it out to you. It's
That's
nuts.
smart. Now
It's going to be really cool.
Both of these work better though if you're in a metro area. If you're a urban hipster, like you and Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Petaluma.
It's getting better though. Foursquare. I use Foursquare.
Look at all the badges you have. I hardly have any badges on my Foursquare. It's just a few. I've got newbie, adventurer, explorer, local, super user, and gym rat. I'm proud to say.
Do you have the player please badge? Have you seen that one?
Player please. Is that if you go to too many bars?
No. It's if you check into a location with 3 members of the opposite sex.
Oh,
so clearly, Leo, you haven't checked in any places.
Oh, player please. And what is? And there's one that says crunk. How do I get that one?
I think you just have to go get hammered.
4 bars in one night, you get the crunks badge.
I think that's how you get that one. The really interesting thing, I mean, the game is sort of fun, but it gets boring after a while on both of these. The really interesting thing is when you check in, other people can leave you tips for near where you just checked in. So here's all the tips for the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay, and there's dozens.
I love that.
Of tips for what to do near you. This was invaluable when I got to Paris because I checked in at the airport and it tells you all sorts of stuff about what to do both in the airport and around you. And then when we checked into our house, somebody left, hey, the best Paris bakery is right around the corner. And that really makes your experience a lot different. It's a lot different than anything like Yelp where you know what you're searching for.
Right. Right.
You know what they're going to do, though? This is really where they're going to monetize this, because if you think about it, you'll check in at a bar and they'll say, hey, by the way, the bar across the street has a free drink if you show them this on your phone, or
if you're the mayor of a bar, you get free drinks, and then everybody competes to become the mayor of a bar. I think that's what Foursquare is doing that I think is smart. Well, you're smart. You've invested in both of them. What else are you invested in? What else this is the best way to ask what you think the future is where you put your money. What else do you like?
I have to pull up my Crunchbase. There's been a few lately. It's probably a lot of the ones that you already know.
I just notice every once in a while I say Kevin Rose put some money in it. I think that your name is as much valuable as anything else. I know you helped Pounce quite a bit when you invested in Pounce.
Yeah, so Dailybooth is another one that's kind of exploding, but that's a little bit younger generation.
What is that, video?
It's like a picture of the day. It's kind of like YouTube, but just for pictures. So you can go in and basically just take a picture every single day, but it's really super social, and they throw the photos right in front of everybody else. So you can see kind of in real time what everyone else is taking pictures from all over the world. It's pretty cool. Then some of the ones like Ingimoco, they make a bunch of different iPhone games out there, Touch Pets, a bunch of different stuff. Twitter, let's see here.
This Dailybooth is very interesting. Your life in pictures.
Simple Geo, which is kind of a S3 for geolocation, but that's not a product. That's just
you like location.
I do like location. I think it's the next big thing for us.
Clearly what's important to all of these is you have an app. You got to have an app. You have to have an iPhone app or a phone app, or maybe increasingly have a Droid app. Kim Landwehr had something to say about that in Kim's post for us. Kim used Vimeo to post.
Okay, for the technology of the decade, I'm going to choose this little thing along with the apps that are on it in the App Store. With this, I can do almost anything on the go that I can do at home or at work as far as an office is concerned. I can read my email. I can take pictures.
This is an ongoing revolution, isn't it? The idea that you can take this with you and be always connected. You couldn't have any of those location-based services without it.
I honestly believe that this is the biggest story of the decade. That's the fact that mobile has finally arrived. I mean, for the last 10 years, 5 years, we've been talking about the coming of mobile and next generation websites on mobile. And, it's clear now with the iPhone and now with Android and the Palm Pre, it's like we're here. Everyone's using. When my mom comes to me and says, check out this new app that I just installed, I know we've arrived.
It's here. It really is, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. Martin Sargent had another point of view about the value of the web, maybe something a little bit unexpected.
Clearly, the biggest tech story of the decade is the fact that thanks to internet, Grocery stores no longer exist. With Webvan and Peapod, we now do all our grocery shopping from the computers in our refrigerators and get them delivered, crisp and fresh, by courteous robots. The only thing I miss? Not being able to read about my rich and beautiful TV friends in Star Magazine while standing in line. Bye, Leo and the gang.
Thank you, Marty. Martin Sargent, the host of This Week in Fun. And, well, he's absolutely right. I mean, look at wait a minute. Not to mention buying kitty litter on pets.com by mail.
I will say, though, I think it's kind of coming back in a way. I'm using the Amazon Prime. Have you guys used that?
Yeah, I love it.
The free 2-day shipping. It's awesome.
But even better than Prime, I've been a Prime member for a long time. What about Subscribe? Do you know about Amazon Subscribe?
No. What's this?
Oh, this is the best thing. So you can subscribe to toilet paper or whatever, razor blades, anything you buy on a regular basis called Subscribe and Save, and you get 15% off because you're an automatic subscription customer, and it just comes every month, 2 months, 3 months, however often you need it. I wish they had more products on there, but it's kind of the same idea, the grocery shopping thing automatically.
I honestly order my toilet paper and my paper towels over Amazon.
Yeah.
It might not be the best for the environment. I think it is kind of, right?
Well, the trucks are going around anyway. Come on. They're going around anyway. Somebody's got to deliver somehow. I have to, in all seriousness, Amazon is clearly one of the big stories of the decade. I mean, you start the decade with the tech bust, right? The stock market tanking, all of these companies like Pets.com, Webvan, and Peapod going out of business. Amazon, the one merchant just kind of struggling to hold on. And even at the time, I think we said if any company can survive, once we come out of this, they're going to be in a good position. Amazon not only survived, they were smart. They took all their money and invested it in distribution centers all over the country. At the time, I remember people thought they're nuts. What are they doing? Boy, nuts like a fox. Jeff Bezos clearly knew what he was doing. Now, Amazon can affordably deliver you stuff from local distribution centers. And people like you and me, Kevin, maybe aren't mainstream yet, but I think we're the kind of precursors of the future. Yeah. This is where I buy everything.
Well, you've seen their stock has jumped, 70% in the last 6 months? It's been insane.
Yeah, it's become obvious.
It just feels as though, I mean, when the economy was kind of taking a dump, I was thinking now's a good time to buy Amazon because everyone was going online. You save a little bit extra. You don't have to pay sales tax, and you get that with Prime. You get that 2-day shipping. It just made sense, and it looks like everybody else was doing the same thing.
You feel that way too, Robert? Do you spend you have a little baby. Yeah, there's his gift card. Was that your Christmas present?
That was my Christmas present from my brother.
Yeah, so. That's a perfect present.
Absolutely.
Sure. Alex knows where you spend your money.
And I'm not going to show you the back with the code on
it. No, and Prime is brilliant. Prime, again, brilliant marketing, right? Because you pay them $75 for the privilege of free 2-night shipping. What's the upshot of that? The first place you go is Amazon because you know you're going to get it in 2 days.
Yep.
You've paid them for stickiness.
Well, and talk about using everything that they have at their disposal. They've taken their extra servers that they have that they know are idle at certain times and turn it into a resource that other developers can tie into.
EC2 and S3.
Were you kind of shocked when they did that? Initially, I was like, wait a second, they sell stuff. Why are they doing this? But now it makes sense. It's like, it reminds me of watching National Geographic where you see those tribes that use every little piece of the
cargo
animal
cults.
They kill.
Yeah.
That's like what Amazon is, right?
There's a precedent for it because you might be too young to remember, but H&R Block had a lot of excess computer power during the evenings. They would use these big mainframe computers to do tax returns all day. And some bright fellow at H&R Block said, we could use these mainframes for some sort of public time-sharing service, and CompuServe was born. Yeah. CompuServe was an H&R Block service, and it makes perfect sense. If you've got excess capacity, sell it off to people who will buy it, and that's exactly what Amazon's done. I use S3 like crazy.
Yeah, the cloud computing is one of the biggest stories of the decade, and a lot of people, it's not a sexy story because people don't, they don't buy stuff, with a gift card, but it's revolutionized how businesses have been built, and at Rackspace, where I work, we've seen in the last 6 months tens of thousands of customers join the cloud, and it's amazing what people are doing with it.
Well, I think,
and we're number 2. So if we're doing tens of thousands of new customers every 6 months, imagine what Amazon's doing.
Not to mention Google, of course, because the Google App Engine.
Yeah,
you were talking about that, Kevin.
Google is less interesting to most businesses than Amazon or a hosting company like Rackspace because they force you to be into their system. You have to build.
You have to use their docs and their
and if you're building a dig of the future, that means you can't sell to Microsoft.
Right.
So
hey, but I just here's a statistic I got from our show this week in Google: 60% of state governments use Google Docs. And I bet you it's a similar number in business. Don't you think Google Docs is a perfect example of a successful cloud computing initiative?
Absolutely. LA just standardized and beat out Rackspace, by the way, on standardizing on Google Docs. So congrats to them.
Pretty dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to take a break. Before we do, I want to mention Steve Wozniak. He said he wasn't feeling well enough to send us a video, but Woz said, and boy, this is a good point. I almost forgot. The big story of the decade, the Mars rover landing and the discovery of water on Mars. We forget, but that's huge.
That's huge.
I mean, I hope that that's the beginning of exploration of Mars, manned flights to Mars. That would be...
I talked with a scientist at NASA, and he said discovering water on the moon was also important for that mission because the moon is going to be a halfway point, or not really a halfway point, but a stopover point for astronauts or for devices that want to go on to Mars.
The less you have to take with you, up that gravity well from Earth, the better off you are.
Yeah.
So who's going on Virgin Galactic?
I'd be there if I had the money. What is it, 20 million?
I think it's $200K, right?
Oh, is that all?
Yeah.
When you're at TWiT, and you could do that.
You can get a sponsor for that.
I would love to go. I'm too old and my eyesight's too terrible and I'm way too fat. But I would love to go into space. That would be, even if they said, okay, you can go on a Mars mission, but we can't afford to bring you back. It's a one-way trip.
You wouldn't go.
I'd volunteer.
No, family.
Oh well, this will be a few years. Believe me, my kids don't care about me at this point. I could go. They'd say, Dad, we'll see you. But, I'd get a call from Abby saying, hey, can you give me a ride? And say, no, I'm on Mars, honey. She used to call me in Canada. I need a ride home. I said, I'm in Canada.
Isn't she old enough to drive yet? She's getting close, right?
This was a while ago. Oh, she drives, believe me. She's in France. She's in Paris right now. Hey, when she does drive, though, and I know Henry wants to do this too, they really want to drive my new Ford because of that great Ford Sync. Smooth, huh? Let me tell you, this is, I know you guys are probably mocking me. I'm sure that, Kevin, you drive a Maserati. And I know, Robert, you drive a Prius. But let me tell you something. If you ever get a chance to take a ride in a Ford, Lincoln, or Mercury vehicle, actually, if you're going to CES, come see it. We're going to be driving the Lincoln, I think the MKS, and take a look at the Ford Sync. This is amazing. There's some big announcements coming from Ford at CES, including, I guess, Wi-Fi. Not what you would think, not like Wi-Fi so the car syncs with your home network. No, Wi-Fi in the car so that you can compute while you're driving around. Now I don't know if that's a fact. I've just read all the rumors about that on Engadget, but I do know that the Ford Sync, the way I have it, the amazing hands-free calling, music search, turn-by-turn GPS built in. You never take your eyes off the road, your hands off the wheel. You just press a button on the steering wheel and it tells you where to go. It tells you what traffic is, weather conditions, ski conditions, sports scores. Even your fantasy football league, it'll tell you how you're doing in there. You can ask for songs by name, ask for podcasts. It's incredible.
There is one thing about the Sync that I think is really cool that I really like. It's the Pandora streaming, right?
Yeah.
You play with that yet?
Yeah. I mean, does it do Pandora streaming?
They just announced it recently. I saw that, Pandora streaming through the
Now, the
Ford
neat thing about Sync, it has USB. So you can upgrade it. You go to syncmyride.com and you download the latest software. You plug it in. Of course, you can plug in via USB your iPhone or iPod. It charges, and the Sync reads what's on it and plays it back by name. Droid, it works with the Droid. It worked with my N900. Almost anything that you've got. If you've got a USB connection, Sync can read it and use it. You got to check it out. Go to syncmyridepodcast.com to learn more. Or, best thing, go to your local Ford, Lincoln, or Mercury dealer. Say, I want to test drive Ford Sync.
Actually, Leo, one of the coolest things that came out in cars is the use of radar. And I know the Ford...
The Flex parks itself.
Ford Taurus. It's not just about parking itself. The Ford Taurus, the 2010 Ford Taurus, if people stop ahead of you really fast, it warns you that you're about to get in an accident and actually pre-tensions the brakes.
Yes.
And
well, your Prius does that too, doesn't it?
It does. I think that if you were going to make something safer, the car industry, I think they should be forced to put radar in every single car.
Well, you know what this is all about. We have the technology to do autonomous vehicles. We're very close to being able to, it's been demonstrated, have a car that drives you where you want to go completely safely, avoiding traffic at high speeds. I think that the car companies know that this terrifies people.
Yep.
So what they do, they put this technology, the Bliss technology, that it came from Volvo. It's in Ford's, it's in the SHO, where it tells you if there's people in your blind spot. The Flex parks itself. This is all to get us used to it. Just, trust the car. Let the car do the work.
No, it's true. When I interviewed Ford's engineers, they said that they actually have more technology that they can't put in the cars because they do customer research, and most of the customers are freaked out about it. I think want it.
When we do this show in 10 years, that's one of the things we'll talk about. And by the way, and I've talked to a couple of people, Templeton,
Brad Templeton.
Brad Templeton, who's this chairman of the EFF, but also among many, he's like a polymath. Among many things he's interested in is autonomous vehicles. He has some really interesting things to say about this whole notion. And one of his ideas, he says, this is a huge energy saver if we could get people used to the idea not of owning their own vehicle, but calling for an electric vehicle when they need it. So it just shows up at your door. You get in, it takes you to where you want. It's kind of like those city car rental things. But it drives Zip car, but it drives to you.
Yeah.
He says, huge savings in power and stuff. He said the problem is, of course, we know Americans, and what they're going to end up doing is getting bigger and bigger cars. Pretty soon, it'll be an RV that comes to you. It'll be your living room on wheels, and it's not going to have any energy efficiency at all. He says what you really could do, though, is if you're going to go on a vacation, you could say, okay, when I want to get a little car, drive there. When I get there, I want that living room to be there waiting for me. Brian Brushwood, who hosts our great NSFW show, he's also on Scam School on Revision 3, great magician, talent, funny guy, has something to say about the decade.
Howdy, guys. Brian Brushwood from NSFW and Scam School, and I want to take you back 10 years ago to this exact day, 1 decade ago, when we all sat at home with our shotguns in hand, convinced it was the end of the world because of Y2K. How great was that idea that at midnight, as the time zones rolled closer, more and more chaos would come our way? Businesses spent $500 billion, and it turns out that the ones who did stuff about it did just as well as those that didn't do a dang thing. Y2K, my favorite story from the last 10 years to the moment.
I think I have to agree with him. Thank you, Brian Brushwood. That was the story that began the decade.
Yeah, I bought a few extra jugs of water.
Did you?
Yeah, for sure.
You weren't at Tech TV yet when that happened.
No.
I remember Patrick and I were on call. They said, we don't know if there's going to be a big story. We're going to let you go home, but you have to be on call. So if anything big breaks, you can rush back to Tech TV and we can cover it wall to wall. And I remember, boy, that was nothing. It was ridiculous. I think another big story, I'm going to go to Mac's Future, because this is, I think, another big story. And we've kind of touched on it a little bit for the decade.
The tech story of the decade is Apple Computers, which came from being a has-been run as a computer company at the beginning of the decade with a really small market share compared to what it is today, to now being a company bigger in market cap than HP or Dell combined, and phenomenally changing two areas of technology. One is music, with the domination of the iTunes store and the iPod in terms of market share for music, digital music, and also dominating smartphones with the innovation of the iPhone and the App Store, and just a phenomenal success. So that's why it's the tech story of the decade.
Yeah.
Apple.
Let's not forget, thanks, Mac's Future, let's not forget that the decade began, 2001 was when the iPod came out. So Apple began the decade with the iPod. In some ways, now, I pose it to you guys, it's not merely the success of Apple, it's the withering of Microsoft, wouldn't you say? You worked at Microsoft. What do you think, Robert?
I don't know that Microsoft has withered all that much. It's just not been all that interesting. They still have $14 billion businesses there and still have quite a bit of market share on desktops. I mean, Windows 7 is selling like hotcakes. So I think Apple has seen opportunities before anybody else and has done a better job than the rest of the industry.
This is where Steve Jobs really excels. I mean, he made not inventing the products necessarily. Personal computer was around before the Apple II. The MP3 player was around before the iPod. Smartphones were around before the iPhone. But he, in all three cases, created a productized it. He popularized it. He made it a success. And I think the same thing might be said about the tablet. I mean, if all these rumors are true.
Yeah, before the iPod, there was the Diamond Rio player?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had a Diamond Rio. I remember Patrick and I doing big stories about how to take a PC and put it in your car so you could listen to music in your car. It was a whole computer.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then somebody did a hard drive based, it was the PBJ player, something like that. Patrick would remember. Hard drive based thing, and it was huge, and it was very clunky, very hard to use. The user interface was terrible. 6 months later, Apple does the iPod, and everything else just dies, and Apple owns it. Almost instantly, Apple owns it.
Yeah.
Don McAllister, who's our host from Mac Break Weekly frequently, and also, of course...
it's Don McAllister.
Hold on, Don. I'm introducing you. He also is from the Screencasts Online podcast. He's really... I'm going to give him credit for having invented and successfully capitalized on subscription podcasts with Screencasts Online. Yeah. Go ahead, Don.
Screencasts Online. With my own personal take on my favorite technology for the past decade. Now, it really is a personal take, and I make no excuses for that, but it's a technology that's really changed my life and many other people's lives in the way that it's enabled us to produce and distribute digital content online. And that's real simple syndication, or RSS. Now, RSS was actually developed back in 1999, but it was only in the 2000s. In fact, it was in the year 2000 that Dave Weiner published the RSS spec that included enclosures.
Wow, that
recently. A really easy way of referencing external media within an RSS feed, and that's when things really started to take off. It really bootstrapped the whole podcasting industry at that time. Now, the next big thing really was Apple's adoption of RSS and podcasting in iTunes, and overnight, I think it was 2005, podcasting really became mainstream, and iTunes became the de facto client for podcasting. Now, a double-edged sword really, in that it did actually kill lots of the third-party, in fact all of the third-party podcasting clients at that point, but it did bring podcasting to the mainstream, and really we've not looked back since. So that's it, RSS, as I say, a hugely enabling technology that not just for podcasting, but for lots of the social media platforms and all other distribution content delivery mechanisms. It's really been an integral part and a huge enabler to change the face of broadcasting as we know it.
Thank you, Don. And by the way, there's my Diamond Rio.
Nice.
I actually have one somewhere. I got to find it. This is just a picture. So what do you think, RSS? I know, Robert, you're a RSS fan, right?
Big one. I named my new kid.
You named your kid RSS?
Yep.
Not intentionally.
Should I go get him? I can go downstairs and
Did
get
you
him.
intentionally? I mean, I know you named him.
3-year-old baby is Ryan Sarouche Scoble.
But did you intentionally pick those initials?
Yeah, Dave Weiner's one of my best friends, so I did that as a
That's very cool.
Pay him some homage.
I thought that was just a happy coincidence. I didn't realize you did that on purpose.
I'm not as huge a fan as RSS as you guys are.
No, in fact, I know, Robert, you probably don't use a newsreader anymore, do you?
Twitter is my newsreader, which Twitter is really an RSS newsreader now, right? So many sites bring their feeds into Twitter through, one of the various services that convert RSS into tweets.
I guess.
My blog, for instance, I have Scoble blog on Twitter. It's an RSS feed. So.
You don't use Google Reader anymore, though.
Not much.
And Kevin, you disagree. You think RSS is?
Yeah, I mean, I had RSS on Google Reader for a while. It was clearly just a geeky thing. I don't know anyone outside of our bubble that really uses it. I mean, there are some people that are technology enthusiasts that are into it, but it really had never caught on mainstream. I mean, if you ask anyone what RSS is out on the street, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. The enclosures was a nice addition for podcasting and gave us all a boost. But I think that the
Kevin,
bulk of our
would anybody have a clue what TCP/IP is or what HTTP
No, and I think that's
is?
what RSS is at this point. It is an underlying protocol. It is not. Nobody uses a newsreader per se, but we all use RSS every day.
Really? I mean, give me an example of like, okay, my mom or dad or even a sister of what would they use
Facebook brings
RSS?
a lot of stuff in through RSS. You don't even see it.
Really?
Yeah, you can subscribe to blog. And my blog comes into Facebook through RSS.
Right.
But anybody who comes over to my page doesn't have any clue it's RSS.
But do most people do that? No. Most people don't have
a lot of people do it.
Well, because they use Facebook or they use Twitter, so they don't know they're using RSS
Facebook to bring their stuff in.
Oh, I see. Do people use it as a publisher so much?
And
I have to say,
don't know what it is.
Even though that this company, TWiT, started as a podcast company and used RSS and still does for the majority of people who are listening to the show will be listening via RSS. And we've created video and people keep saying, when's there an RSS feed? When's there an RSS feed? I don't think that the future is of delivery by shows via RSS, or at least not visibly. I'm hoping
that I do agree with. I think Twitter has
too hard
changed my reading behavior.
It's
and
too hard.
Facebook has changed it for everybody else. Right?
Yeah.
I guess, you know what, Robert, I will agree with you on this. I think that RSS, in my mind, is all about the fact that it created a structured way for us geeks behind the scenes to publish content that will come in the form of subscribing to, TWiT on a Roku player or whatever it may be. But the end consumer will never know what RSS is. And I think that RSS as a reader, like a Google reader, will never hit mainstream. I don't think people will even care that much to go and find that little RSS icon and click add.
I agree. Even us hardcore geeks no longer use readers, right? And we were the guys who used readers.
Yeah.
I launch Net Newswire every once in a while, and I go, oh, too much.
It's like an inbox. It's like an inbox.
It's
right?
an inbox.
You look at it and you're like, oh, if there's something good here, I'll hear about it through Twitter. I'll see it on Gig or whatever it may be. There's so many other ways to get our news now.
So I get back to my point, which is it's aggregation alone is insufficient. That's what RSS did, was aggregation. It takes curation. That's the insight you had for Dig. That's what Twitter does. It's aggregation plus curation that makes something useful. And I think that ultimately curation is where all of us who create content add value. It's one thing to create content, but then what you need to do to make yourself valuable is to curate as well. That's what this show is. We're curating a bunch of ideas, bringing them forward, saying these are ideas worth talking about, worth thinking about.
Yep.
Catherine Hall is a photographer who has an interesting point of view. She's been on TWiT several times. Nice, very good photographer.
Hello, my name is Catherine Hall, and I'm a professional photographer. One of my favorite tech stories is the way that the internet and laptops have revolutionized my business and basically given me the ability to work from anywhere. So here I am in the Gulf right now, working from my laptop, and here's my internet card, and sleeping on a yacht.
Show off.
And basically able to do my work. It's pretty awesome.
Like Patrick Norton, she's using EVDO. Internet everywhere is huge.
That's a big one for the last few years. I can't travel without my Verizon EVDO card. It's awesome.
That's how we're gonna be doing a lot of what we do at CES. This will be very interesting. We bought a box or are renting a box called the Mushroom Portabella. Mushroom's the company, Portabella's the unit, and it's weird. You plug in 4 or more EVDO cards, preferably from different providers. It aggregates the bandwidth. Then you plug a camera into it. We'll actually be using it to Skype, so we have two-way connections. And now we have a portable unit. We're going to go to the parties.
Do these really work, though, Leo? Remember back in Tech TV days, we were doing these cable modem routers that you plug 2 cable modems in, and they would combine the bandwidth and give you a faster. And they never worked.
I'm praying it works.
Actually, Leo, I was doing quick videos for the last 2 years on the show floor at CES.
I know.
They have good 3G coverage now, which is pretty amazing.
Well, Sprint especially is big in Vegas. Yeah. AT&T, not so hot.
AT&T anywhere.
What do you mean? I got 5 bars here in my house now.
That's not the story of the decade, but definitely the story of the year is how AT&T won the smartphone wars and lost all of its customers' loyalty by being just the crappiest.
That's going to be the story next year. The big story next year, well, aside from the tablet, will be the fact that Apple switches to Verizon.
Oh, good prediction.
Right.
Yeah, maybe not a prediction, maybe just wishful thinking.
Yeah, well, the contract's up, so you have the option.
I think the big story is if Apple doesn't do that, Google's Android is going to force Apple to be reactionary to them. Google's Maps on the Android is far superior to Google Maps on iPhone. And so is Google Voice, and so are some other apps. And if they just shave off the corners of that device, because the device is clunky and the OS is a little clunky, they're going to be the mobile OS next year.
I really like Android. I really like the Droid phone actually quite a bit, especially because of the Verizon connectivity. What about Nexus One? What about you've probably seen the rumors, crazy that they might be, that Google January 5th is going to start offering its own HTC built, but Google designed phone, and they say by invitation. Does that make any sense?
I think Google is going to do some really interesting stuff in mobile next year, and
it's where they need to be.
I would buy a Google phone, right? Google has a brand name that everybody in the world recognizes and feels some affinity to, and it's going to be really interesting to see that go against Apple.
You'd buy a Google phone, you'd buy an Apple phone. Would you buy a Microsoft phone?
No, not
no.
Not for a while.
No.
The one wild card Microsoft has is Xbox Live. If they can bring out a mobile device that hooks into Xbox Live in some interesting way, that will get me interested. But that's the only wild card that they have at this point.
Interesting to see. Bobby Llewellyn, who is, of course, on the great Red Dwarf television show, plays Crichton the Robot, and has a great podcast called Carpool. Comes to us from the UK.
Hi, Robert Llewellyn here in the good old UK of England. I'm thinking that in the last 10 years, the most influential piece of technology, certainly that affected my life, was YouTube. I tried to do video on the internet for many years before YouTube appeared, and it was a miserable experience, to say the least. I think YouTube rocks. I think it's just an extraordinary new medium that we're still all learning how to use. So I think for me, in the last 10 years, YouTube has it. For the next 10 years, I'd just like to predict something else. And no, Leo, it's not a new Mustang, so I'd love to have a go in it. It's this little baby.
That's a Mitsubishi electric car he's driving off there. You think electric cars are going to be the next big thing?
Maybe. I mean, I certainly would love a Tesla. They're too expensive, and the infrastructure just isn't there yet to support, most Americans getting in an electric car. The Tesla goes, 240 miles an hour on a single charge? That's not enough to get, up to the Sierras, so I can't use it as my only car.
Chevy Volt's going to be interesting because it's got a gas engine, but it's not like a hybrid. It's got a gas engine generator, so you can at least get some power out of it if you run out of battery. I would buy a Volt.
As long as it's reliable.
I kind of regret, to be honest.
I would sign up to be the first one.
As much as I like the Mustang, I kind of regret not buying a Ford Fusion. By the way, Ford Fusion sales up 67% this year.
Hey, Leo, you heard what David Prager did, right? He actually put his name on the list for one of the new Teslas. Or not Tesla, but the other one.
The sedan?
Yeah, the sedan.
You're overpaying the boy.
They're 45 or something like that.
Oh, that's not bad. Oh, that's not bad.
I mean, it's expensive, but it's not crazy.
Yeah. No, that's not bad at all. No, I'm very tempted. I looked at it. I was very tempted, but I just, do you really think Tesla's going to be around?
Well, Ford has some cars coming out after CES that'll be very interesting in this space. And Toyota just announced a plug-in hybrid. So all you need is more batteries, which raises the price.
I like plug-in hybrids. I really think the plug-in hybrid is a good model, because then you've got best of both worlds, right? You can still use gas, but you plug it in, so you can only use electricity for at least the first 100 miles.
But again, you got to buy more batteries to make that
which means
happen.
More weight. That's
more weight and more cost, right?
That's something that didn't happen in this decade, which was an improvement in the least in battery technology. Or solar efficiency, solar cell efficiency. That's something that has to happen in the next decade, and I don't know where that invention is. We were talking a little bit last year with Steve Gibson, who's very excited about the idea of ultracapacitors, which are very high-power devices. Take a while to charge unless you have a high-voltage plug, but then can charge very quickly and have a lot of power in them and are much smaller, much more compact.
People in the chat room, by the way, are arguing with you that batteries haven't improved. I think they're right that they have improved, but that our expectations have far exceeded the improvements that have been made.
I guess you're right. I mean, if you look at the iPhone 10 years ago, I would have had to have a shoulder pack for this. So you're right. The lithium ion in the has certainly been a big improvement.
Definitely laptops. You guys remember the laptops back in 2000?
You get 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And they weren't even backlit. Yeah. Black and white screens.
Toshiba Tecra or whatever they were.
Tegra.
Tegra.
Yeah.
Tegra, I think, was the high-end one or something.
Right. And the
Anyways, about the point about YouTube, I agree. I think YouTube is revolutionary.
All of this internet content is revolutionary, but YouTube itself, just, boy, did they catalyze something.
I mean, last night I was watching videos of the protests in Tehran, and some of the beatings and stuff on YouTube. The fact that we now have the ability to send high-def video to each other is just extraordinary.
Truly revolutionary. And
I mean, Leo, when you started Tech TV, how much money did it cost to start Tech TV?
Don't even talk about it. I think
hundreds of millions of dollars.
By the time Paul Allen was done, I think he'd lost $300 million.
Yeah, and that wasn't even HD.
No.
That was 640 by 480.
We'll get to HD. Another very big story of the decade in just a second, but I do want to talk about Audible.com. Actually, Audible, for me, has been an important part of my decade. I started using audiobooks when I had that long commute to Tech TV in 1998, and at the beginning I was using cassettes. By 2001, Audible came along and transformed my life. At first, Audible played on the Diamond Rio. That's how I listened to my audiobooks on Audible. They also made their own device, which is kind of a clunky device. I don't think it's around anymore. Now they're on hundreds of devices, including, of course, all the iPods, iPhones, the Zunes, even weird things like GPS devices. Many of them play Audible content. Your Kindle plays audio content from Audible.com. Audible is a great resource for people who love reading, especially people who love reading and never find the time to read. If you're stuck driving the car a lot, and you can't find the time to read, but you're in the car. Audible means you can listen to the bestsellers. You can listen to great history, nonfiction, humor, fiction in your car, at work, at the gym, anywhere where you can't hold a book.
Gym is huge.
You don't rock climb with Audible, do you?
No, I do like treadmill stuff.
All that boring crap.
It's the best way to kill time.
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing the boring treadmill stuff, there's nothing like it. I get all my reading done, frankly, at the gym. Audible is great for that. Now, we've got a special deal for you. You can get your Audible account right now. Sign up for the Platinum account. That's actually a really good deal for the Audible sign up. Audible.com/TWiT2. That's going to give you 2 books a month, and the first 2 are free. Now, normally we talk about the Gold account, but they let me talk about the Platinum account because they know that TWiT listeners are loaded. They're smart. They like to read, and they want to listen to Audible.com. 2 books. It's not that expensive. What is it, $15 a month? I can't remember. That's the account I have. Believe me, it's worth it. Audible.com/TWiT2. Take a look at all the great choices. Are you listening to Audible? How about this one for you, Kevin? Leaving Las Vegas. Remember that great Nicolas Cage movie? It's a novel by John O'Brien.
Yeah, I got something off Audible the other day. I got the Book of Secrets by Deepak Chopra.
Oh, you've always been kind of that earthy, crunchy kind of guy, aren't you?
That's right.
You're very new age. People don't know that about Kevin. They think Kevin's
I do like my granola and soy milk.
Yeah, and tea. You love the tea. Yes. I bet there's some good books about tea. How about 3 Cups of Tea? Boy, is that a great book. You can get that on Audible, too.
Nice.
I highly recommend Audible, and I invite you to try it absolutely free. 2 books are yours to keep, even if you cancel at any time. 3 Cups of Tea by Greg Mortenson. I'm going to recommend this one. This is an amazing story. And in fact, he's started a charity that my kid's school is very involved in called Schools for Kabul. They're building schools for girls in Afghanistan. Absolutely transformative. This book will fill you in on One man's mission to fight terrorism and build nations. 3 Cups of Tea is very inspiring. Greg Mortenson. It's one of many, many, many books you can get at audible.com/twit2. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech and all the shows on the TWiT network. In fact, we thank all of our sponsors. It's been a great year.
How do you get to be a sponsor, by the way, Leo?
You give me money. You want
Who should we call?
No, all our ads go through PodTrack. So just contact Mark McCrary at PodTrack, and why, you got somebody who wants to sponsor the show?
Yeah, my boss was asking in Skype right now, how does Rackspace sponsor the show? So.
I will get you text me his phone number. No salesman will call. However, okay. I will be glad to talk to him about it. We'd love to have Rackspace as a sponsor. Absolutely. I think the world of Rackspace. And I'm going to like it even more when they buy ads. Big story. This is from Australia. We've got 2 Australians in the audience today visiting us from Sydney, and Tech AU sent us this via vidly.com.
Hi, this is Jason from Wodonga, Australia, and I think the story of the decade has to be high definition. Over the past 10 years, my work environment, my home setup, and definitely my home theatre system has significantly changed. I'm now running a 52-inch television, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3. I'm sitting in front of 2 27-inch monitors at the moment, and love living in a high-definition world. So for me, it has to be high def.
It's interesting because I didn't realize, is high def huge in Australia? Everybody's got HD TVs now, and the broadcasters broadcast on high def and 1080i. Okay, because I know that this really started in the U.S. a decade ago when the FCC did the kind of surprising thing. They said to the broadcast stations, dudes, you're going digital, whether you like it or not. We're taking that frequency back from you. They put it off. It finally happened this year in June. The stations went digital. And what they told consumers was, if you want to watch, you're going to have to get a digital TV. Now, for a lot of people, that meant a new TV. And when that meant a new TV, it meant an HD TV. And I think that really, I don't know if it was an intended consequence, but an unintended consequence of the digital migration of broadcast television in the U.S. was the mass adoption of high-def televisions. If you had to get a digital TV, why not get an HD TV? Everybody's got them now. And who would have thought in 1999, if I had told you, Kevin Rose, you would be buying a $3,000 TV in 2010, you'd say, you're nuts.
Yeah.
$3,000.
It's funny, though, how quickly, you get used to HD and there's no going back. Like, if you start watching football in HD and then see it on a standard def television, it's like the worst thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fuzzy. I want to see the blades of grass. I want to see the drops of sweat.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the thinness of the TVs. I mean, did you see the Panasonic TVs? They're like 50 inches and they're this thick.
Wow.
It's really crazy.
We're going to see a lot of those at CES. I guess the top one right now is the Samsung 8500 LCD, which is, I think, 1.6 inches thick. I just bought a Kuro because, Pioneer's getting out of the plasma business.
I got a Kuro as well.
This is your last chance, and these are still the best TVs out there.
Great blacks.
Yeah, incredible TV. We couldn't figure it out. I'm kind of embarrassed. We couldn't figure out how to turn it on, so we sent it back, and then somebody told me, oh, there's a hidden switch. It's like, oh, jeez. So they're going to send us another one. Whoops. Absolutely HD. This is the decade of HD. And, I think we're beginning something new. We were talking before the show began. You've all seen Avatar. Yeah. I just finally saw it last night. I don't know about 3D. I think the jury's still out on 3D. I don't think this is the revolution that people hope it will be, even though the motion picture industry and the television manufacturers are all going for it in a big way. But I do think that the technology that Avatar perfected that is going to transform motion pictures is motion capture. What'd you Kevin, you've seen it twice now in IMAX, right?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, the animation was
It's real. It's realistic. They look like real people. Sigourney Weaver's Avatar looks like Sigourney Weaver.
I love how they make the girl aliens like just hot enough to where you're like, I could definitely.
Did you have that reaction? I had that exact reaction. Yeah. I thought, wow, she's kind of cute. I know she's 8 feet tall, but
blue,
but she's kind of cute.
Yeah, totally.
It's funny that you had that reaction because I had that exact reaction. Because normally aliens, they're aliens, but so they were all very attractive.
Yes,
it's the first time I've seen I saw Beowulf, which I don't know if you remember that. It was kind of a weird movie, but it was all CGI, motion capture, maybe even rotoscoped CGI, and it had some nudity in it. But it was like, it's not real. It's a cartoon. These guys weren't.
That was with Angelina Jolie as the main actress, right?
Yeah. It wasn't a great movie. But this, I think, shows you where Hollywood's going. They would love to motion capture all these movie stars and then let them go out to pasture. Go ahead, get old. We don't care. We got you. It was really remarkable. So you both liked the movie? Did you like it, Robert?
Oh, absolutely. Must see in 3D. And if you can get to an IMAX theater, definitely do that.
The glasses didn't bother you?
Didn't bother me at all. It was a weird feeling getting out of the theater, and it was like, wow, I was so involved in the movie that now I'm back in real life, and it felt disorienting a little bit.
I wanted to be blue and 8 feet tall.
Yeah, that's
it. Some hot alien chicks.
I want a jacked-in tail.
Oh yeah, for the first hour and a half of the movie, I was totally bothered by the glasses, and more so bothered by the tricks they were doing to show off the 3D, stuff coming at you and stuff. And I thought, this is just distracting. I'd like to see this in 2D, please. But the story is so gripping that by halfway through, you just can't. I think it's right when he tames the flying beast. It's like, okay, I'm in it. I forgot about the glasses.
I'll be right back. I'm going to go get baby RSS.
All right. While you get baby RSS, let's see what Gina Trapani thinks was the big story of the decade. She's with Lifehacker, of course.
Hey, this is Gina Trapani from This Week in Google. And my favorite tech story of this past decade is the rise of the blog. I mean, blogs started in the late 90s, but it really wasn't until this decade, after 9/11 and when Google purchased Blogger.com in 2003, that blogs truly democratized publishing and gave armchair pundits, like myself, a printing press and an ability to reach thousands of people every day. Can you imagine an internet without blogs? I can't at this point, and that happened this decade.
That's interesting, because some might say the blog is kind of history. It's been replaced by microblogging and other forms of expression on the internet. You still do a blog, Kevin, but like me, you do it once in a while, right?
Yeah, I just don't update it as much as I used to. It used to be one of those things where you think, I got to get something out every few days.
Now you tweet.
Yeah, if you have an important link that you want to share out, if you have a video even, you post it on YouTube and then you link to it on Twitter, right? It's like there's no need to really go out and do that full-blown blog.
Right. I think this was the decade of the blog, but I think it's past tense somewhat. Robert, you're a huge blogger. Is the blog still important?
Yeah, it still is important because every once in a while you have something you want to say that's more than 140 characters.
Yeah, you have to have somewhere to write. I think what's happened is the blog as a blog is meaningless. It's now just a web page, right?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. The big blogs to me have not. I don't still think of them as, that's a blog I go to. It's just another website, right?
It's content.
Yeah. It's not the hub where you follow.
Right.
Like I follow Kevin Rose on twitter.com/Kevin Rose.
Right.
I don't follow him on his blog anymore, on his website.
It's not the hub, but you're right. And this is why I didn't like the word podcast. I don't like the word blog either. It's all just content. And why pigeonhole it? It's just content. We do stuff. And what's with Twitter and Foursquare and other sites, FriendFeed, we now have ways of publicizing what we're doing. If you're interested, you go read it. You might go read it on our blog, or you might go watch it on YouTube. But you don't have to ghettoize this all anymore. Dr. Kiki has a thought about the big story of, let me press that button, of the decade. Host of This Week in Science and Dr. Kiki Science
Hi, my TWiT story of the decade is the Large Hadron Collider. Seriously, it is the biggest piece of technology on the planet right now, the most complicated piece of technology, and it's going to help us find out about our universe. People have been talking about it for the better part of the decade, and it came to pass that it actually works during the decade. So that is my story of the year for TWiT's story of the decade. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you, Dr. Kiki.
Well, what's interesting is CERN was the story of last decade, right? Where did the web come from? It came from CERN.
Particle physicists rule.
Yep. And touring that machine,
You've been to CERN?
Yeah, I got a tour of the LHC. It's a stunning machine.
Wow.
And now you can't tour it anymore because it's underground and they don't let you down there. But
and you can't go into the LHC because you might drop a baguette and take the whole thing offline for 6 more months.
Now you'd be radiated. That's the problem. When it's actually live and they're spinning protons or electrons
you don't
around
want to. You don't want to get in the way of a Higgs boson. That thing is a tough ass particle. Alex Lindsay thinks that video is also pretty important. Of course, he's the video king.
Hey everyone, this is Alex, and of course I think one of the big things that happened this last decade is video on the web. I mean, I started doing it in 2001, and it was painful. It was expensive. It was ugly. And now you have everybody with a flip camera shooting with it. And so I think that there's still a business model that needs to be created, but some people are, like a lot of us on this show, figuring that out. So hopefully it's just going to keep on growing over the next decade. But I think that what happened in web video, as far as how it affects the individual and the corporation and the broadcast companies, is pretty groundbreaking.
Of course, Alex shot that with a 5D Mark II. That's pretty
right,
apparent.
Exactly. I was going to say, his video looks amazing.
He's got depth of field. He's got detail. Yeah. Guess how he shot that one. That's pretty darn obvious, isn't it? That's funny. Figures he'd shoot it that way. Yeah. One more from Mark Pelletier. We're going to wrap it up soon, but Mark hosts our Futures in Biotech, and I think this may not have been the decade of biotech, although it was the decade that the Genome Project finally yielded fruit, but I think the coming decade might well be an amazing decade when it comes to biotech. Let's see what Mark Pelletier of Futures in Biotech has to say.
Okay.
Hey,
Twits, the story I'd like to share may not only be the story of the decade, but possibly of the millennium. I first learned about it when I was researching for Futures of Biotech Episode 2 back in 2006. Leo and I interviewed Leonard Grante from MIT. Dr. Grante was the first to discover genes that could modulate lifespan, the sirtuin family of genes. These genes, or more precisely the enzymes that they encode, can, when activated, result in a metabolic state that mimics caloric restriction. Caloric restriction has long been known to extend lifespan, but now we understand one of the important underlying mechanisms thanks to Grante's work. A collaborator of his, David Sinclair, at Harvard Medical School, then went on to search for drugs that could activate the sirtuins and identified resveratrol, a compound found in red wine thought to be responsible for the French paradox. Sinclair founded a company with Christoph Westphal, which sold this year to GlaxoSmithKline. The company was called Certris. And GlaxoSmithKline bought them for $720 million.
Wow.
Grante, Sinclair, and Westphal all remain co-chairs of the Scientific Advisory Board. Now here's where the story gets really good. Since the FDA doesn't consider aging a disease, the drug is being developed towards other benefits of caloric restriction, including type 2 diabetes, for which they've already completed a phase 2A clinical trial. So extending life expectancy is simply a side effect. I think it'll be a transformative moment in human history when these drugs hit the market. Increasing the human lifespan to 120 or 130 years will result in a major paradigm shift in our understanding of life and what it means to being human, from being a simple living organism to a true substrate for engineering. Inevitably, life will change, and so will we.
Wow.
For This Week in Tech, I'm Mark Pelletier.
Thanks, Mark.
Have a great year.
Wow, that's kind of an amazing thought. I mean, this is an example of a story that broke this decade, but the results haven't really hit home yet. Imagine
I've actually heard of a bunch of these doctors that are doing this research are actually practicing caloric restriction themselves.
Right.
And anybody can do that at home, obviously, but it's going to take years and years and years before we find out whether or not it's working.
Well, but that's the thing about resveratrol is that it mimics the effect of it without caloric restriction. So you continue to eat. You get to eat normally. You don't, because caloric restriction, you have to reduce your calories to about like 30 or 40% below what you would normally eat. You're basically starving.
Apparently, you look horrible and lose a bunch of weight, and it's just not really healthy. But
you may
live
not
forever.
You may not live. You may live forever, but you may not live forever. You'll feel like you're living forever. You'll be miserable. Right. So
I don't want to live forever.
No. But this drug, in effect, duplicates that result. Because obviously caloric restriction isn't, well, maybe not obviously, but apparently caloric restriction isn't what extends life. It's a side effect of it. And if they can perfect, these sirtuins, these drugs, these hormones, and give you the hormone without actually perpetuating, this caloric restriction, now we're talking.
when I first heard this, I mean, a few years ago, I was pretty stoked because in theory you just drink a bunch of red wine, but the amount of that Resveratrol that's in the red wine is it's so slim.
Yeah, I was stoked too. Any stories that we didn't cover that were, you think, huge stories for 2000? Actually, let me, Etchu, who is one of our Swedish viewers, I want to get him on because this has to do with you and HDTV, and I love Sweden.
Hello, I'm Dennis from Sweden, and I think one of the biggest tech stories of the decade was the whole HD-DVD debacle on Dig. It really showed the impact and effect that the community have. It transcended Dig and showed what was possible in the new era of the internet.
Dig the Code. I think he's talking about Dig the Code, right?
That was crazy. That was the time when the HD DVD key leaked on the internet. People started posting stories to Dig, and we took it down because we thought
you thought you had to.
Material. Well, they sent us a cease and desist. Take it down and we'll sue you. And we have, you all know how deep pockets the people that were backing at the time HD DVD had. So, I mean, it blew up and there was nothing we could do to stop it. I mean, there was thousands of submissions, comments, YouTube videos of people singing the key.
Callie Lewis sang the key.
Yeah, it was crazy.
We named that TWiT episode with a key that week.
Yeah.
Although I think I've changed one letter because I didn't want to get sued either.
I mean, it just goes to show you that the masses can assemble on the internet now and take action. Yes. That was really kind of the big story there.
Yeah, in some ways, that was a precursor to what's happening in Iran. I mean, not as important, obviously, but still in many ways.
I think the one story that we haven't really heard underlined is Facebook. I think that's the company of the decade. Google was the company that came along last decade that clearly has changed all of our lives. And, my wife, I watch her. She talks to all of her elementary school friends from Tehran, who are now all over the world. And that's just a little tiny story. When I go anywhere in the world, everybody's on Facebook. It's one of those companies that comes along once every decade or so.
It really is huge, isn't it? Yeah. That's a very good point. I mean,
that and the founder behind it, too. I mean, think of how young Mark Zuckerberg was when he started the site, and just what he's done at that age is just insane.
Every time I see video of Mark, I go, my God, he's a kid.
He is a kid.
I thought Kevin was a kid.
Now?
Yeah. This really, I mean, geez, Louise.
Their best software designer, Chris Putnam. I knew him when he was 16, and he would let me listen to him play piano.
Oh man,
I've got an awesome story that I don't think I've ever told anybody, but I was at South by Southwest 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, and Mark Zuckerberg was there, and we were hanging out at this bar. And there was just a bunch of people around, and everyone was about to do a shot. And tequila shots were coming down the line. And Mark leans over to me, and because everyone was kind of doing the salt thing, and he's just like, "How do I do this?" And I'm like, "Okay, lick with your hand, take the shot, take the lime." And I just thought that was so awesome that Mark,
he had no idea.
He had no idea how to do it.
Well, now you can say that's pretty good. That's your claim to fame, Kevin Rhodes. You taught Mark Zuckerberg how to do tequila shots.
Right.
And I might have taught you how to do tequila shots,
yeah,
actually.
I think that actually works. It's filtered down, Leo. It started with you.
Down.
Right.
And David Chung taught me how to do tequila shots. Hey, guys, really, this has been a great way to end the year, to end the decade. I can't imagine a more fun way. I thank everybody who sent videos. We've run out of time. There are many other videos. Maybe I'll play a few as we wrap up, because so many people tweeted their videos, and we thank you all for doing so. I thank Robert Scoble for being here, my old friend. I've known Robert for 2 decades. We're entering our 3rd decade as friends.
Before blogging,
there was this thing called the chat room. And Robert Scoble and I hung out together. It's great to talk to you again, Robert. Scobleizer.com, of course, is your blog, but don't forget building43.com. That's where all the video is going that Robert's shooting these days, and great stuff, too. Kevin Rose, I've known since he was Mark Zuckerberg's age. And
2002, I think, is when he first met.
A long time. Now, of course, world-famous founder of Dig.com and Revision3.com and host of Dig Nation. I do have to apologize for beating Dig Nation out as a best video. That was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose.
It's all good. We're coming back strong next year.
You won last year. I think it's, we got to rotate a little bit.
That's right. As long as it's in the family, it's all good.
It's all in the family. That's the point. Kevin and Robert, have a happy New Year. I hope you have a wonderful New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and I look forward to working together with you in 2010 and beyond. And I thank all of you, the TWiT family, that's made this possible for the last 5 years. TWiT was started in 2005, April of 2005. And so we really half this decade we span, and it's been an amazing decade for all of us at TWiT. We've just had a blast doing it, and we're very grateful to you for letting us do this. We began the decade with Tech TV. We're ending the decade with Revision 3 and TWiT, and I really think that's a great way to sum it all up.
More viewers than we had on Tech TV, right?
Many. Between the two of us, are you kidding? Many more, yeah. And I think much more interesting stuff, too. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll see you next week. Happy New Year. Another TWiT is in the can. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Scott Bourne from Photo Focus. The top tech story of the decade? Well, for me, it's the decade of digital photography. Cameras with 6 times the resolution, $500 cameras with pro caliber results, post-processing capability that's beyond belief, the ability to shoot in darn near no light, and now cinema quality video, everything from Aperture, Lightroom, Photoshop, HDR, panoramic stitching. It's been a great decade for photography, and I can't wait to see what happens next. See you next time on Mac Break.
Hey everyone, Patrick Beja here, and the most important tech story of the decade, to me, is the issue of net neutrality. Now, it might seem like it's not a huge problem, and it's only come to our attention recently, but I do think that it could redefine the whole internet if it's not handled properly and if we don't pay attention to it. So I do think it deserves the spot of #1 most important tech story of the decade.
Hi, this is Dane Golden, Leo's producer here at TWiT. This week we're talking about the big tech stories of the decade. One of those big stories, in my opinion, has got to include the Googleization of everything, because while 10 years ago Google was just an upstart and most people used Yahoo, today Google's involved in everything that we do, almost, it seems.
Hey Leo, this is Al Malventano from PC Perspective. Best tech news story of the decade, huh? Well, I got into it a little bit of a late start there, but and so did the technology, but I'd have to say solid-state drives, for sure. That's the one. It's led to a whole bunch of tech news stories over the last couple of years at least, maybe not the whole decade, but I'm sure it's going to be a hot item in the next decade as well.
Hello, my name is Brian Kilby of TFRadio.net. What's the biggest tech story of the decade? Well, that's easy. The proliferation of high-speed internet. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have all this.
Hey, Leo. I think without a doubt, the tech story of this decade was the fact that Twitter and Vidly and TwitPic and all these other great services that allow us to be journalists have essentially democratized the press and put us all on a pretty equal level. I mean, you see big-time reporters from the major networks using Twitter, but you also see people in Iran and in Afghanistan and all these countries where the news is happening. You see them going to the scene, and you see them putting their content up for public consumption straight from the event. And I think that the idea that Twitter and Facebook and these other platforms are allowing us to be journalists is an exceptionally interesting trend to watch as it progresses. And I know I want to be a journalist when I grow up, preferably in the tech sector, just like yourself. So that's something I'm definitely watching, and I'm hoping it's going to just continue as we move into the next decade. So thanks, Leo, and keep up the great work.
Hi, Leo. Best tech story for the decade has to be the 3G iPhone. Being that I'm in Canada, I've only had it for about 2 years, and it is definitely an integral part in everything I do. From email to the iPod to the camera, hardly use it as a phone, to the GPS to everything. This is definitely the biggest tech thing of the decade by far.
The biggest tech story of the last decade? Screw you, Arrington! Screw you!